Welcome to Collab Not Multiplayer. I'm Honeyshuckleex.
I'm Sacklot Barbecue.
And I'm Giggleklutz. And today we're talking about Superliminal. What? It's been so long since I played this game. Yeah, luckily, Sackbot and I gave ourselves a refresh in the spirit of it. So first let's get into the details and we'll give you a review, and then we'll boil into a spoiler-rich discussion as per getting to be normal for our games. So, Superliminal is a puzzle game with perspective puzzles. It's their description listed on Steam as perception is reality. In this mind-bending first-person puzzler, you escape a surreal dream world through solving impossible puzzles using the ambiguity of depth and perspective. It's put out by the developer and publisher Pillow Castle. It's $19.99 on Steam, and it's available on many other platforms, but I can't verify pricing on those. So where do we start?
So the basic setup is that your cryptic, character, it's like who they are isn't a huge deal, they're just kind of an avatar, has signed up for this experimental dream therapy to treat some mental health struggle they're having.
We're not sure what it is. It's kind of undefined. It's supposed to work for depression and anxiety and all the catch-alls.
So they have you, fall asleep and they start using a
constructed liminal space?
Yeah.
Superliminal, if you will. And, you're very quickly introduced to, the whole premise where certain objects you can pick up and move them, and depending on where you place them, they will enter the world at different sizes, weights, scales, etc.
So it's like, how someone might say, it's not big, it's just in the foreground?
Exactly.
Not here.
Right. Here,
it's both.
Yes. Perception very literally is reality. Whatever you see becomes what it is. And then you use that mechanic to solve basically room after room of puzzles as the game progresses. They get more and more complicated, sometimes silly, sometimes more surreal, sometimes more sinister. All depends on the area, because for the most part, the game kind of takes place in, a building, kind of. It's very reminiscent of the office space in some ways of Stanley Parable. Yeah. I kind of get more of, convention space a lot of the time. Right. Well, it starts off in more of a hotel, but more like a clinic hotel at first. And then there's a spot that seems like a convention-type hotel with a ballroom and all that.
Yeah. It's just those kind of, sort of big, empty, formal spaces. Well, I guess they're not so big necessarily, and
it's perspective.
Yeah, they kind of, since it's, all set in a dream, it's like, the spaces don't actually have to make too much sense.
They seem to try to.
But it's like, yeah, there can be oddities in them for the sake of puzzles, and it's not a big deal.
Right. Because it makes sense that there's just things thrown in that don't make sense because it's a dream.
It's like, it's a dream therapy specifically because it needs to be able to be in, odd customized spaces. And,
there's a lot of, in writing, big no-nos when it comes to, it was a dream. But this game handles it very, very well by having that be, the founding principle of the game. You know you're in a dream. That's how these things are possible. And I think that's a very elegant way to do it. So, the reason that we sound kind of stilted at this point is because we do really like the game. We recommend the game. We want to offer a review for it. The review is going to be very short because it's best played and experienced. But if you're not going to get around to it, you're not going to get around to it. Honeyshuckle did stream this one, and she's got the VOD videos edited by Sackbot here, ready to go, and those are up on her YouTube channel, and you can just watch Honeyshuckle play. The one caveat I will say is that you are missing all of the in-game dialogue when that happens. It's all what you'll hear is Honeyshuckle playing, and you they had to cut out all of the dialogue in the game, which is fine for the video and kind of the play experience, but you lose some of the nuance of what we're going to talk about later in this discussion. But it's still, it's a hoot. They put a lot of jokes in. They did a really good job with it. I'm very proud.
Oh, look at that. My mom's proud of me.
Of the work these two did to put these videos together. We encourage you to go to Honeyshuckle's YouTube channel at Honeyshuckleex.
Honeyshuckleex.
And we'll have a link. We'll have a link in the description here. I'll have a link on the blog. Please go watch. Even if you did play, it's a good time.
Every view helps a lot.
And go ahead and give her a follow on there, too. Or subscribe, I guess is what it's called there.
Look at that. Maybe I should just have my mom do all my plugs for me.
I'd be happy to if you want me to. I mean...
I just bring you on the stream just for like 5 seconds to go, hey, Mom, can you plug me quick?
Absolutely. Who's gonna love you more than me? I mean, come on. Well, Sackbot actually has been probably beat there. But anyway.
It's a close competition. We're tight.
I don't think that that's a competition.
You're right. You're very not competitive.
Yes, to an extreme. Which is
you wanted the podcast to be called Collab Not Multiplayer for a reason.
All right, we're sidetracked now. But anyway, yeah. If you want to, at this point, if you haven't played the game and aren't going to play the game, I recommend that. Otherwise, beyond here there be spoilers. So take care of yourself, whatever that means. And from here on out, we're going to discuss deeper themes, favorite puzzles, solutions, that kinds of things, and
the narrative as a whole.
The narrative as a whole.
So because manipulating perspective is, this thing's whole thing, like...
this game's whole mechanic?
Yes, yeah, the thing is just a fill in the blank. We all know this. Anywho, because perspective is everything, one of the, twists that kind of comes with some of the early game is kind of, you see these two-dimensional facets of, what this, of an object just on walls or ceilings, and you have to complete the image to get the item. And that just fascinated me in my playthrough. I had trouble wrapping my head around this at first, because I'm like, I see the thing, how do I get the thing? And sometimes you have to go through multiple layers of this. You have to bring something into reality to bring another thing into reality, and these moments just kind of stuck with me.
I just thinking, there was... I start you off by lining things up to get this cube, and then the next one, it's you need to make another cube. But in order to do that, you have to make a table first that has has a vase on it, which has the last piece of the second cube you need to make the cube.
Mm-hmm.
And then later again, you once you're used to that mechanic, you see a big chess piece projected, seems like projected, but I guess painted on the wall, that there's a missing piece on a pipe. But right next to that is a cube that when I played, was so focused on making that thing, putting it together, that I completely missed the cube sitting next to it. It's a checkerboard cube sitting on a pipe. I should have been able to see it. There's nothing else like it anywhere around there. It's visually distinct had I just looked, but I still didn't see it.
If you've watched the videos on my channel, you'll know that I also fell prey to this exact same thing.
I know where it is right off the top of my head, because I had an extended gag. I edited that together, specifically noting where the cube was the whole time when Shuckle wasn't seeing it.
So if that happened to you, don't feel bad. It happened to us too.
And I guess something to note here is that there's a lot of secrets in this game. I found a secret in that room in particular, which is why I'm thinking of it right now. But you played Giggleklutz, you played the game as well 2 days ago and found a lot more secrets that you had no idea existed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely worth several playthroughs, especially if you're not time constrained. I was time constrained. I just wanted to do a quick playthrough, and I still had enough time to fiddle around and find a few things that I didn't know were there before. So there's a lot of richness hidden in there. I didn't even go and look at what kind of achievements Steam has for that. I'm sure if I go and look in there, there's a ton of other stuff to do and to play. So there's a lot of replayability in the game. So as well as a multiplayer mode they added after we bought the game, which it looks like a hoot from what we saw online. So we might join in, do that sometime, but we haven't yet. So I can't speak to that. But it does look like a lot of fun.
Yeah, like being able to temporarily alter the size of the people you're playing with sounds absolutely wild.
So, one of the themes that I've used I have applied to this game since the first time we played it over a year ago, was the fact that, unlike a lot of other games, the controls, the mechanics, are very forgiving. In fact, I referred to it as the game is your friend. In this game, you can jump higher than it seems like you should be able to. Things don't have to line up quite right, and the game is very forgiving. As long as you're working towards the solution that the game intends, which is a wide variety of solutions. You don't have to use the right object. You just have to, know where the exit is and kind of understand the approach they want you to approach that exit at. Or puzzle solve. Usually it's escape a room. You're in one space, you want to get to the next space, because the whole goal is to get out of the dream eventually. And we'll get into some of the tension building that happens through the narrative in a sec here. But yeah, in fact, when I was playing the second time a couple days ago, and whenever I'd get stuck, I would repeat myself the mantra. I'm like, oh yeah, we use this as an example. The game is your friend. The game is your friend. Because sometimes the puzzle games will challenge you in ways that are not just solving the puzzle. Not only do you have to figure out what the solution is, but you have to mechanically be able to apply the solution in order for the solution to take effect. Usually meaning, lining things up just right, or, looking at you, witness.
I kind of compare this to Baba Is You. Like, where in this game, like in Superliminal, you just, as if you have the pieces in about the right place, you can do the solution. You've got it. Where I have been playing Baba Is You fairly recently, and there's a lot of execution involved in it, and you need to move everything into the exact position, and if you don't, you might have to just keep backing up a long ways to fix your mistakes. And it gets to the point in that game where I know what I need to do. I just need to see somebody start setting it up to know how to actually execute it, and it kind of gets annoying.
I can say with Superliminal's puzzles, it's like, it doesn't necessarily hold your hand through them, but if you can show you know where you're going, it'll hold its hand out and hoist you up.
Right. The game wants you to succeed, unlike in some games, and my experience is mostly with puzzle games, but I assume this is true with platformers and everything, where their focus is on mastery. So the game itself kind of becomes an antagonist, not just antagonists within the game. Superliminal is not like that. Superliminal wants you to grow. Superliminal wants you to feel good about playing the game, and the game itself is on your side. So yeah, whenever we use it as a family vernacular now to say whether or not the game is your friend, with Superliminal as our baseline as to what we mean about that.
And as you were talking about this, I realized there is a platformer that I could think of that is on your side, and funnily enough, it's Celeste.
Really?
I think of Celeste as being on your side because every single time you can retry so easily. They're checkpoints that make sense, and you can understand where they are and what you'd have to do again. And if you collect a strawberry, for example, as long as you touch the ground, you've got it, no matter what, and it's beautiful. But that's a sidetrack. That's.
But it actually lets you know that we do use that, and we compare and contrast games on that level now. So now, podcast listener, you're going to recognize that we do talk about that in Honeyshuckle streams, and we're going to continue to talk about it in future conversations. That's part of why we made this episode come early in our series, is so later on we could start talking about whether or not the game is our friend, because we wanted to say that in a few other episodes. We wanted to talk about whether or not the game is your friend. Like Manifold Garden, for the most part, the game is your friend. Mm-hmm. It doesn't punish you so much for not knowing for not being pixel perfect. As long as you are trying to do the thing that you're supposed to do, or one of the things that the game wants you to do, it helps you do that, for the most part. It won't help you find the solution, but the mechanics are there to support the gameplay, not to challenge you in your gameplay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you still need to use your noggin. It's like when it comes to Superliminal, it's a game you can really, journey through without necessarily have to quote-unquote beat it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even though it certainly felt like it for me this last time.
You were under time constraints.
Right, and because of that I felt rushed, and I made some, I won't say mistakes, but I caught myself in loops. I didn't look for things as thoroughly as would have facilitated me solving puzzles.
And I'm sure, the dialogue of the game doesn't necessarily help with that, because, while the game is on your side, the lore and story not necessarily feels like it.
Right, and the point is for them to not feel like it for part of it. I mean, well, for most of the game. And spoiler, they do resolve that in the end.
So yeah, it's like, the whole thing is, it starts out with you've signed up for this, dream therapy or sleep in the dream space they're building for you. And you have this, some kind of, computer text-to-speech voice talking to you, telling you to go through the,
orientation.
The orientation protocol, but it doesn't end up working out.
Right. You end up thwarted in completing the orientation protocol in a way. We are family debating whether or not the AI is an AI or whether it's just a recorded message to promote the narrative that the whole dream construct that you're set up to experience as part of the therapy protocol. Love,
Yeah,
if you've played, you know what we mean.
I'm in camp. This is all scripted, but it sounds like you guys disagree with me.
Okay, so when you're going through the orientation protocol, you literally bump into an unexpected brick wall and have to, break some of the structure down with a giant piece of cheese and, get off track.
Or if you're playing multiplayer using each other.
Right. And that's kind of the silliness of this game. This game does play into whimsy, and we'll get into that in just a second. We're going to talk about narrative first.
Okay, so you break off this path, and then the computer voice is like, you failed the standard orientation protocol, what the heck, man? And then, you start getting messages from, the doctors, putting this on. His name is Dr. Glenn Pierce. He says that, every time he talks to you.
Which is through, you'll see a boombox with a tape player in it that you click play on. And then, hello, I am Dr. Glenn Pierce.
We have no idea where you are. So, you were being presented with this notion that, something has gone wrong and you are wildly off track. And they're just kind of trying to find you in the dream.
Yeah, supposedly it's new technology in universe, so this is not... It's within the realm of possibility.
Right. And as it progresses, they tell you are in more and more danger. And they don't... Well, yeah, they do eventually start listing off the symptoms of what can happen to you if you don't get yourself out of the dream.
It's like you could run out of dreams and never wake up.
You could wake up in psychosis and never know you woke up.
What a very Inception thing to do.
Yes. It's enough that they did put a dissociation warning on the game as well as the normal epileptic one. So if you do suffer from dissociation, I don't discourage you from playing the game, but I do discourage you from playing the game alone. I would encourage you to play it, if not with a friend, then in contact with a friend. And, as a bonus, if you pick a friend that's already played the game or a friend that likes video games, all the better. Because,
Maybe that's why they have the multiplayer.
Maybe so.
You can have somebody right there in the game to, not be part of the narrative and be able to ground you a bit better in the...
Because existential crises are a thing, and thinking about how you might never wake up can be a problem. So don't go it alone if you know you're susceptible to those things. Take that warning seriously. Dissociation's a real thing, but it doesn't have to be a debilitating thing all the time.
Basically, it all, reaches its climax when I started introducing this concept of sort of essentially causing some kind of dream overload. Mm-hmm. So basically you have to do that. And, it ends up kind of secretly has been the point of the entire exercise.
Which they reveal in a very uplifting, monologue at the end, and even if that's all you watch of the video that Sackbot and Honeyshuckle made, just hearing it made me feel better about a lot of things. It's interesting, but it re-emphasizes the theme that the game is on your side, because it's just encouraging and uplifting. I don't know.
It's like whether or not the AI voice you've been hearing is, actually, making its own decisions or running on a script. It's like all the stuff you've been experiencing up to this point was intended as part of the dream therapy.
It felt like a message that I needed to hear at the time. Because when I played this game, I was still new to streaming. There was a lot of doubt in my head about, am I doing this right? Surely I could be better at this. Surely there's something I'm missing. And then just hearing the game tell me, that no, I'm doing okay, it just felt really nice.
It was an interesting play on the "it was all a dream" trope. Not joke, but trope, where it doesn't feel like they pulled the rug out from under you. The fact that, yes, you were deliberately being misled as you go along this, which is why we give you the spoiler warning. The impact of this moment is really, it hits deeper if you've just gone through the struggles of trying to solve these puzzles and make it through these rooms and question your own perceptions and deal with problem solving and just kind of these ingrained mind tracks that we have toward excellence and performance and productivity and those kind of things. And, the feeling of being trapped by circumstance, which is so common for everyone in our capitalistic society where so much is completely out of our control.
When so much of your own survival requires somebody else to think you're valuable.
Oof. Sorry. That's a oof right there. Yeah, it's kind of an underlying tone. I won't say it's a theme, but it is an underlying tone. Which is counterpointed by what Honeyshuckle really got out of this game.
Is that the entire game is a giant toy box. There's literally chess pieces, there's baby blocks, there's doll houses, paint and soda, and it's a toy box. What can I say?
The game has very much feels, sort of a novelty of manipulating, comfortable and everyday objects to solve, absurd puzzles.
And to remind you that you're playing a game. We're encouraging you to use your leisure time while you're here in this liminal environment, in a digital realm, that you, the person sitting in the chair, playing this nondescript player character through this...
Excuse you.
Okay, I'll leave that in. Yes, we do live in a realm with other humans. And they do make noises that we cannot control, whether we want to or not. So, yeah, the game is reminding you that you're playing. It's like you have video games, and you're using video games in your leisure time. Are you actually using them to relax? Are you actually using them to undo some of what this society that treats you like a utility is doing to you? And I think, there are lots of games, and we'll get into this in later episodes, that kind of have an existential crisis around the nature of video games and why do we play them. And they do it in varying degrees.
But Superliminal is firmly in the camp of games being play. And, it is not shying away from that at all.
I always come back to the part where it's there is kind of, the dark level kind of has a horror theme to it, but so much of the stuff they use to look scary is also a gag.
Yeah, diet soda.
It's you have these big cases of soda, diet soda, but it's most of it's being obscured, so it just says die.
Die.
Right. But then they do use, actual stuff to scare you in that too. Some of it is misdirection, where the die, but then there is a sign on the wall that says the goal for each day is murder, and then beans.
And there's red splotches on the floor, and I earlier in that playthrough, I believe I read something that said that they needed more red paint, I think.
So yeah, they hint that it's red paint beforehand and then outright confirm it at the end.
But still, it is... The lighting goes all of a sudden really dark compared to the rest of the game. There are red streaks on the doors, handprints on the wall, using very normal danger tropes in other video games. It all stems to also remind you that you have to keep the scope and scale. You have to keep your sense of place to understand that, oh, this isn't that kind of game. This isn't that kind of space. There are no monsters here. The only monsters in Superliminal are the ones you brought with you in your own mind and on your own shoulders.
Yeah, like, I think that's part of what makes that level, frankly, iconic, is that this is toying with perception in an entirely different way. When you see the game, you think, like, you see the adjusting of scale, but in this case, it's a perception of tone, and it's a perception of darkness, and it's just really distinct that there's nothing else quite like that in the rest of the game. And I don't see this kind of done in a lot of games.
Having objects relate to your own perspective is kind of a big important concept. Obscuring things with light isn't.
Right.
But
okay.
They're able to introduce it later on and have it totally fit in with the themes of the game.
Yeah, and you still manipulate object size to help you. Like, you need more light, just make your light source bigger. And then the puzzle becomes not just seeing around your light source, but also manipulating it through corridors and stuff.
Yeah, part of me wonders if, the area got its sort of, horror aesthetic because they wanted to do dark puzzles and it was just unsettling anyway.
And they ran with it. That if that's the case, it makes sense that it seems to be the only level that completely plays with perception of tone like that. I don't think any of the others really do. Aside from the seeming like you're in a constructed common area space, the places where you're supposed to be, rather than the places where the employees are supposed to be. There's the behind the scenes kind of things, like if you've ever worked like anywhere, there'll be cultural spaces where visitors, customers are allowed, and then there's the behind the scenes places where volunteers and workers are allowed, and the game has you go through both of those.
Yeah, well, primarily in this dark level, you are in like a employee area, it feels like. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I didn't even think about that right now, just the fact that, when you're on track, you're in formal spaces and event halls and hotels, but then when you're getting off track, you end up in maintenance areas.
And warehouse type areas. And it's those kind of places that really made me think of Stanley Parable. Because those kind of, the behind-the-scenes spaces, the warehouse spaces, versus the common areas for the everyday worker, or the design in Stanley Parable, or the seemingly preferred path, or the intended path, that's the word I mean to use. The intended path of the dream in Superliminal, at least the perceived one, is in, like you said, those more public common areas. And the tone is very different between those two kinds of cultures. And it does, I don't know if it's playing to explore it, but it is definitely felt, right? I'm not remembering any place where they really played with that idea, but that idea is definitely present.
And this is kind of game design talk here, in a way. It's a good, subtle way to tell people if this is the right way to go.
Absolutely, because there's always a little bit of mischievous disobedience involved in being behind the scenes in a space that you weren't invited behind the scenes in. Like stepping up on stage and then going backstage when you're not part of the production. I don't know if anybody else has ever done that, but I know we're all kids at heart, or children at one point, where we would go places that we weren't invited and aren't supposed to be. Looking behind the curtain, as it were.
But, considering stuff like placement and tone, even the placement of the dark level seems very important and impactful, because I think if it was too much later in the game, the tension of the dialogue would make it feel almost insurmountable, like a life or death in an even more intense way than it already portrays.
And in fact, now that you mention it, it's amazing that I don't even know if they did it on purpose, because, as artists ourselves, we are kind of impromptu storytellers, that testing the waters and calibrating kind of for a kind of safety before they started doing the final build to a climax was a really important thing to do. Because, now that they built up the tension and then pulled back, we're going to let you think about threats that you might find in the physical realm and show you that that's not what we're going to present you with here. No matter what we throw at you in the next parts of what's happening in the finale of this story, none of them are going to throw you off of cliffs where you splat. None of them are going to, try and tear your soul from your body. None of them are going to give you any real threat aside from the fears that you carry with you.
Yeah, every hole leads back to the ground. No one here is after you.
There's nobody here really either.
All the threats are made fearful by the darkness. When you give the light back, everything's fine. You're not in danger.
And you realize you never were.
We're just painting the cafeteria.
Maybe need to hire some new painters.
Yeah, and
they're a little messy.
Yeah, exactly. It's right, because as I was telling you about that, I was remembering the things that come next, like the elevator that never ends, and the chessboard that you fall through at different layers. So, even it's easy to succumb to the feeling that the environment's I'm gonna get lost. I'm gonna stay lost forever. But
except you're not. There's a return to checkpoint button.
But you can stay in the environment. You don't have to, as a player, not the player character, pull yourself out and then come back in. You can stay in that environment no matter how frustrated or succumb to panic that you might get. Because for a while there, I did get panicked. And I did, flail as I do. And kind of lose sight of where I might look for solutions, and when that happens, when the fear comes in, you narrow your scope, you narrow your perspective, and the game is actually expecting you to do that the more stressed you get by the environment. And another way they do that is in the pool level. You walk into this locker room area, and as you do so, the doctor gives you this encouraging speech that uses a lot of negative doom and gloom language, only to send you to a bouncy house in the bottom of an empty pool. And just the juxtaposition of those two things. And when I was playing it the second time around, I had completely forgotten how it ended. So I couldn't remember what I was up against, and I couldn't remember that this was all constructed, that it wasn't like Stanley Parable where you did something wrong and now it's falling apart because you did something wrong. You're going against the plan rather than this was the plan the whole time.
Which in a way I guess kind of means you got to play it again for the first time, and I'm kind of jealous.
Die mad? I don't know. What do you want me to say? But yeah, no, literally I had forgotten how it ended. Because I hadn't been working on the video with you guys. I had seen the VOD. And, when I play things intensely, I don't necessarily build a memory that sticks real well. If it all happens in one day and then I don't revisit it for a long time, I'm going to forget, And I think that's partially age. I got tons more books and TV shows and stuff stuck in my brain, having a couple decades more experience in life than you, so they're not as fresh and they're not as solid as you guys are. So the impact of these things are going to be, while I will be able to see them more deeply for themes than you might be able to, having a richer perspective with more stuff in my catalog than you, the hills and valleys and the impact is going to be sharper for you guys with the gift of youth. I hadn't thought about it like that before. But anyway, coming out to that bouncy castle after being given this backhanded, I don't know, it almost feels like gaslighting. It kind of is, the way he talks about, we want you to never give up. Don't think about the doom. Don't think about blah, blah, blah.
Don't think about how you're, trapped in your own mortality. That's bad. Don't do that.
Yes, it's the whole speech there is a whole list of these things, planting seeds of how you are trapped and how you are doomed and about how things are going to go sideways. But don't do that. It has a very bootstrappy kind of quality to it that just made me grumble the whole time because I hate it when people talk to me like that, and I hate it when people think that kind of thing is real advice, forgetting the ending that he's doing this on purpose to trigger this in you, only to set you up with a bouncy castle. It's like, what? And now, okay, there's an inflatable castle here, and so, of course, I totally lose track of what I'm doing, and I have trouble figuring out the puzzle, and where do I need to go? And that's just it. I totally, in that level, both times I played it, lost sight at that point of where I wanted to go, and I wonder how much of it is due to that auditory trigger that they literally put in there on purpose. Oh my gosh, this game! This is why I love talking about it. This is why we play it together, because these layers of stuff they put in these things aren't visible to a singular point of view, because they weren't constructed by one person. They're edited, they're done with teams. And even if something that rich is done by a single person, it's done by a single person in layers over time. It's not all formed in mass like a dookie from the sky. I don't know.
That is certainly a metaphor one can use.
They shouldn't, and I shouldn't have either.
Well, I mean...
What a wonderful note to leave off on. It's
I didn't know
beautiful.
we would play Tears of the Kingdom and pretend that's what those relics are now.
No! No! This is what I had to live with. I'm just gonna put that out there as like a blanket thing. Sometimes you may think...
honestly, that's all I have to say.
You guys might think I'm the silliest one in my house, and you would be wrong. I'm shaking my head.
And that's pretty much what we had to say about the game. And if we talked about it more, we would have more to say. But at this point, this is what we've got. The discussion can only get deeper and richer from here. If you want to continue that in the YouTube channel or on the blog, please do so. Or pester Honeyshuckle on her stream. She probably will be annoyed if you try and talk about a game she's not currently playing, but
It depends on what I'm currently doing. If I'm in the middle of a combat shrine, then of course I'm going to be a little annoyed.
Yeah, because we can definitely be sure that the listener is going to know what that means. But anyway.
Oh.
Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm Honeyshuckleex. I stream on Twitch on multiple days a week.
I'm Sakwa Barbecue, like the rest of my folks here. I play a lot of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
At least right now, yeah.
Yeah, it's still pretty new for context in the future.
Right.
Yeah, it came out last week.
And we will be doing an episode on it eventually. We're too immersed in it right now to have much perspective. But yeah, if you ever want to hit us up on the socials where we are, we would probably be happy to gab about Tears of the Kingdom because, oh my goodness, there's so much excitement about that. But anyway, and I'm Giggleklutz. I'm in charge of the blog. I don't know, I'm pretty proud of the playlists I put on YouTube to go with the episodes, and I'm really proud of the essay I wrote for Broken Age, if you want to check that out, or whatever. In-depth analysis is kind of my jam. We'll see what avenues that leads to in the future, but I'm really grateful for everybody listening. Thank you for joining the